I am a Catholic woman married to an atheist man. I really would love to share my faith with him. Do you have any words of wisdom or hope for spouses unequally yoked like me? May God continue to bless you. And this is also from Anne, a different Anne. But yeah, there's unequal, that kind of suffering in that kind of not a shared spirituality. And I would guess, I just throw out to people, it's the kind of thing you need to think about also before you get married.
Well, of course, that's true. Now, if it so happens that you're in that marriage, I mean, one of the things that can be done is to figure out what kind of stimulus a person is going to want to need, you know, in order to get beyond what Charles Taylor calls, right, the buffered self, right? And of course, we've got a culture now that buffers itself, you know, against all forms of transcendence, all forms of the supernatural, right? And so the buffered self, you have to break through that. Now, what kind of evidence would do that? What kind of stimulus might do that for your husband? I'm not sure. Now, some people who are quite rationalistic, I would think is some of the new evidence that's come out from physics, which we will talk about in future programs here. You know, some of that new evidence for God, for a creator of the physical reality, that could be helpful for that kind of scientific personality. I've often found that near-death experiences, even though people, you know, kind of go, oh, hogwash, when I start presenting the real data for that, and by the way, you could go to that book, The Soul's Upward Yearning, just go to chapter 5. The whole chapter is based upon studies, peer-reviewed medical studies of near-death experiences. Now, these are really massive studies with lots of veridical evidence. As I said, the blind see for the first time during clinical death, etc. These things are really impressive, but you know, you got to have some initial openness to that. But if there is initial openness, I would choose a stimulus like that. Again, you know, I have found there are actually people who, you know, have just poo-pooed the resurrection for so long. But when I lay out the evidence for scientific evidence, you know, coming from the Shroud of Turin for the resurrection, I'm telling you, I mean, people will go, you know, I know this sounds bizarre, but I just tell them, look, you really ought to look into this. You know, this 1988 carbon dating was really very, very, unfortunately inopportune, but also very wrong. And I think a new carbon dating will vindicate the fact, you know, that Giulio Fanti's datings, you know, I mean, this guy did some really impressive work. I mean, this is Raman laser spectroscopy. Another test he did was, you know, Fourier transformed, spectroscopy as well. And of course, he did a mechanical tension and compressibility test. The vanillin test done by Dr. Ray Rogers all showed, you know, that the dating is very probably 50 AD. All these things considered, sometimes these kinds of rational piece of evidence can really be helpful. Alternatively, you know, sometimes people just want some kind of evidence from the heart. You know, I would, you know, this new book that's coming out, you know, not the one immediately, but the one on suffering. When it comes out in about 6 months, take out chapter 10, Why Would an All-Loving God Allow Suffering? And maybe that's the kind of thing that could be a helpful stimulus. So I'm not sure what kind of person your husband is. I do know this, though. God doesn't leave us bereft of evidence, and he doesn't leave us bereft of clues, rationally or of the heart. So the evidence is there, and I've tried to amass a lot of it in this 4-volume quartet, and maybe you can see something by maybe paging through a few of these things, or just going to our website, magicenter.com, and just flipping through some of the pages and seeing if there's something that might interest him on a more generic level, and then get him into the world of the transcendent.